What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here for PackersNews.com, live on Facebook late Monday afternoon. We have heard from an animated Mike McCarthy, letting everyone know Aaron Rodgers will indeed require surgery for his collarbone, his throwing shoulder, and the Packers not quite ready to throw in the towel yet. Rodgers was not placed on injured reserve today. He has not yet had the surgery and or even had it scheduled. But that will be happening sooner rather than later. The one move they did make today, as Tom Silverstein reported this morning, the Packers added Joe Callahan to their 53-man roster. And the corresponding move, as the Packers announced later in the day, was Quentin Rollins put on IR with an Achilles injury. So those are the moves that are made, and you can see from the tenor of McCarthy's press conference that he's a bit bristly, and I think you can understand why. One thing was crystal clear in that press conference is that he was not pleased with the way his team responded to adversity in Minnesota on Sunday afternoon. Clearly, after Aaron Rodgers went down, I wouldn't go so far as to say the team fell apart, but it definitely was dispirited, and they never really got back what they needed to compete. McCarthy mentioned several times the lack of communication, mental mistakes, things of that nature. And it's pretty clear that he wants that stuff corrected, and he wants to come out all guns a-blazing against the Saints on Sunday. He also made it abundantly clear that Brett Hundley is his guy. He said a couple of times, I have 3 years invested in Brett Hundley. He's going to be our quarterback. He got noticeably upset when asked about the possibility of bringing in Colin Kaepernick. I think this is the path that they've laid. They are up to this challenge. They want to. I'm thinking, my sense is McCarthy wants to prove everyone wrong who has said, multiple times throughout the years that he is nothing without Rodgers and the roster is not that talented, etc., etc. All this stuff that we've all heard various places throughout his tenure in Green Bay, including sometimes in the comment section here at Facebook Live. But that's all well and good. I know we've heard a lot in the last 24 hours about Brett Hundley and his ability, and he needs a week of work with the ones and game planning around him, etc. And that's all well and good and true. But at the end of the day, it's about Brett Hundley making plays. And those plays that he has made so far in his career have been precious few and far between, mostly because of a lack of opportunity. But even when given opportunities in preseason, in training camp, they have come in fits and starts. And one thing McCarthy did talk about today is getting him into a rhythm and getting the offense into a rhythm. Now, obviously, that's your design and your goal every week. It's hard to do when you're cobbling together an offensive line, which is most likely what they will be required to do yet again heading into Sunday's game against New Orleans. But that's where they stand at the moment. Obviously, we don't have too much injury information. McCarthy was asked about one or two guys, notably Lane Taylor, who he suffered ankle and knee injuries yesterday. Said he didn't have any new information on him. I think we won't get much of anything until Wednesday when it comes to the lengthy injury list. So I'll turn it over to you guys, and I'll start with Jerry. Can Hundley lead us to a playoff spot? I think so. I said on Twitter a little while ago, I think what has happened now is that Mike McCarthy has turned into Ed Harris in Apollo 13, where they've lost the moon, which was the Super Bowl, and now they have to come up with a new mission, which would most likely be yes. I think getting to the playoffs now would be a pretty decent accomplishment for a team that has been solely built around Aaron Rodgers, especially obviously on offense. To come out of this with a playoff berth would, I think, be a testament to McCarthy's staff and the players on the team. And I think that will be their goal. Can they get it done? Yes, I think they can, if they can ever get to a stretch of the season where they are not suffering multiple injuries throughout a game. This injury run is one of the worst I've ever seen, and it's going to take everything, all their resources, all their coaching acumen, and all the ability with the players for them to get over this. It's a monstrous challenge, but one that you got to think you wouldn't be in this business if you're an NFL coach. If you didn't rise to this kind of challenge. This is the kind of thing where McCarthy is going to be presented with all the odds against him, and he's got to make it work. Do the playoffs really get us anything? Rich, does anything get us anything? I mean, what kind of I don't understand that question. They are there to compete. That is literally their job, is to compete. So, yes, it gets you the accomplishment of being, I believe it's the first team in NFL history to go, was it 9 years, 10 years in a row? 9 years in a row to the playoffs. They would go along with the Patriots if both go into the playoffs. So that's an accomplishment. You know, that is literally what they're paid to do, is to compete. And I know I see online all the time, oh, they should tank for a better spot in the draft, etc. NFL teams don't think like that. I know fans do, but that's why fans play fantasy football. And NFL people and front offices and coaches and players, they play to win. They coach to win. That is literally their job. No excuses, they gotta win. Jonathan, I would say that's probably what they're saying inside 1265 Lombardi today. I think they have a favorable next 3 out of 4 games. It's hard to say if favorability, how the matchups work, until we see what kind of team, health-wise, they're able to put on the field. I mean, if they have, say, both starting tackles, let alone Lane Taylor, then maybe, yeah, they can be considered favorable against the Saints as far as being able to, they should be able to score on that defense, etc. But if they're running out McCray at left tackle, that's going to be a long day. And you got to think they're going to have to keep up with Drew Brees and company, which you would have to think, especially if Kevin King misses another game, if Devon House misses another game, if Morgan Burnett misses another game. You know, Drew Brees may put up 500 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns. So, yeah, it really is going to be a week-to-week proposition with this team until they can get some semblance of a stretch of health. Will the Packers bring in some cornerback help? Bodies are dropping. I think they have to, with Quentin Rollins being placed on injured reserve. They may look at Demetri Goodson. I know Dom Capers spoke after McCarthy just a little while ago and said both Demetri Goodson and Vince Beagle should practice this week. And once that happens, once they hit the practice field, they have 21 days to activate one or both of those guys. So Goodson may be a guy they look at. I know that won't excite fans. I don't think Goodson's a top-flight corner by any stretch of the imagination. But at this point, he's a healthy body, which is what they need. Let's see. Please give us some glimmer of hope. Alex, I think the glimmer of hope will arrive on Sunday after a week of prep in what kind of offense and what kind of game plan the Packers are able to cobble together. But until then, it's pretty much all speculation. It's all you got. Yeah, he'll never keep up with the Saints. Well, there's some positivity. Packers cannot cover squat. Well, Matt, not in their current configuration. That is for sure. Trade for Joe Thomas. Oh, Tyler. It wouldn't be a Packers season without a Packers fan asking for the Packers to trade for Wisconsin's favorite son. Trade for DCR. New York isn't working for him. Well, Jay, they finally won a game. And, the reports were that he was going to be coming off suspension today or tomorrow. So maybe he's back in McAdoo's good graces. But, yeah, that's a move I would look at if I were Ted Thompson. But I'm not Ted Thompson. Bennett can't catch and Randall can't tackle. I think Bennett can catch. He's had a really rough stretch as far as having really absurdly bad drops. But Randall not being able to tackle, there I agree with you. Team T finally does something this offseason. Timothy, he did a lot of stuff last offseason. Tony Romo would be a good fit. Thomas, I don't see that at all. He's never run McCarthy's offense. He's never even run an offense similar to the one McCarthy runs. He hasn't been training. He's been out of football pretty much the last 9 months. And now you expect him to come in and lead a team? I don't know. I'm not sure I agree with your police work there. Bowman signs with the Raiders. He would have helped. Jim, I agree, if only because you saw this team, as injured as it is. Jake Ryan is up and down for what they ask him to do. The problem being, they're going to be facing lots of teams that spread them out, starting this week with the Saints. Bowman is a 2-down player, and he's not a guy that's going to go, in your nickel and dime. He's really a base player, so he's not going to play a ton of snaps in Green Bay. The Raiders, believe it or not, are probably worse off than the Packers as far as talent at the position, especially when you factor in how well Blake Martinez has been playing. So it's really no surprise there. We're going to rally about Bet Hundley. Matt, I've thought of that like clip from NFL Films of Dick Vermeil talking about Kurt Warner so many times in the last 24 hours. And it's funny that you mentioned that. Now, granted, I don't think that's going to happen. As far as I don't think he's going to come in and be Warner-esque and lead them to a Super Bowl, but I do think the team will rally around Brett Hundley. Was a fine issued on the hit of Aaron Rodgers? Well, not yet, Rachel. They don't hand out fines until Friday, the week after each game. So look for any kind of news on that front late Friday afternoon is usually when the NFL announces it. What's actually wrong with Rollins? Travis, he has an Achilles injury. I'm sure you saw yesterday during the broadcast after the play he was injured on. He was on the field for a good long while, and when he was finally helped off the field, he couldn't put any weight on his foot, and then he could barely even get on the cart to get to the locker room. So, it's an Achilles injury, and those are brutal. Blake and Ryan have been impressive this year so far. Lots of tackles every game. I agree for the most part for what they ask them to do, especially Martinez, obviously. I think he's made a big jump. I think Ryan has been hit and miss. I just think, I think the perfect example is that goal line play yesterday. Like Troy Aikman said on the broadcast, it's basically an Oklahoma drill, and he let McKinnon just run right through him. You can't have that from your inside backer on the goal line situation. Taysom Hill would have been cool to have him in the mix here. It would have, and I know he was exciting, it was preseason, but, 2 or 3 plays against fourth stringers in the preseason is not going to come in and save your season. Brett Hundley has run this offense for 3 years now. It's time for him to take the reins. As McCarthy has said time and time again, young players, young quarterbacks especially, at some point in their development, it's just time for them to play. And with Hundley, he's had all the training camps, he's had all the games, in mop-up duty, preseason, etc. It's time for him to play. And now this will be his time to kind of show what he can do, so to speak. Kaepernick is unemployed, yes, Debbie, and now he just filed a lawsuit against the league for collusion. Not sure that really helps his cause. I understand the frustration on his part, and I understand why he wants to get back into the league and feels he is being colluded against, but that news breaking, was it right at almost at the same time as Rodgers going down, was kind of eerie. But, McCarthy stated very adamantly after the game yesterday that Brett Hundley was his guy. And then today, again, he reiterated that stance and then said, I have 3 years invested in Brett Hundley. And then almost immediately after saying that, he was asked about bringing in Kaepernick. And he was not pleased with the question. So I don't think Colin Kaepernick's walking in the door anytime soon. Hundley has watched the GOAT for 3 years like someone else I remember. Don't lose faith. That's a lovely message. So did Flynn and Tolzien, how did they end up? Well, Flynn won some games and made a bunch of money. And Tolzien got hurt. So, I don't know. Tell me. Is Rodgers out for the season with no chance of coming back? Not yet, Frank. He is having surgery. McCarthy announced it. There is an outside chance that he could return. Now, it's very outside, but it's an outside chance. So that's why he hasn't been placed on injured reserve yet. He has not had surgery yet, obviously. They're still working on pinpointing a date and time. But they will exhaust every possibility of bringing him back before they shut him down. Now, they may shut him down with the thought of bringing him back off of injured reserve. You have 2 spots that you can do that with. He would have to be out for 8 weeks, but then after that, he could be brought back. But all that is just speculation right now. What has to happen first is he has to have the surgery, and then the Packers will move on from there. Hundley better than Flynn and Tolzien? Yes. Being 33 years old, do you think Rodgers will contemplate retirement? No. Hundley is mobile, and he's close with A-Rod. Give the guy a week and hope field. Let's see if the sky is falling still on Monday. Yeah, that's a reasonable stance. If Hundley goes down, then do they bring in Kaepernick? Maybe. I doubt it. I think they turn to Joe Callahan. Let's see. Surgery should mean shorter recovery time if it's plated. Not sure how bad the break is. Steven. MD checking in. Basically, what I'm hearing is if Rodgers is healthy and we're in the playoff picture, he will be back. If not, it'll be unlikely. That's one possibility, yes. What can McCarthy do to help Hundley in the play calling? I think you can help give him more defined reads, one side of the field, roll him out, although that hasn't been his best part of his game. It's easy to say give him, the short passing game, etc., but I think they just need to run the ball a little bit more and a little bit better than they did yesterday, and tailor the offense to his strengths, whatever they deem those to be. I like Hundley better than Rodgers, Super Bowl homeboy. Jay, that is a bold statement. So is Rodgers out for the whole season? Not yet. Can Hundley hold the fort down? I think so. I mean, it's going to be a very different offense. I would look to, if I was trying to, get an idea of what McCarthy was going to do as far as his offensive game plan, I would look at the 2010 Patriots game when Rodgers was out with a concussion and Matt Flynn had to come in, and everyone thought the Patriots were going to roll. It was going to be this big blowout. Packers offense wouldn't be able to score, etc., etc. And obviously they lost the game, but the offensive game plan was really good, and it was tailored around easy throws, running the football, getting the ball out of Flynn's hand, and to the most part, it was really effective. And I think that's the kind of thing you're going to see. It's going to look a lot different than what we're used to seeing with Aaron Rodgers, but that's to be expected. What about Matt Flynn? Matt Flynn is done. Run first offense, play action passing. Steven, I think there will be that element, no doubt. What do you think our records will be with Rodgers out? No idea yet. Let's see Hundley with a week to practice in a game situation first before we start forecasting the second half of the season. Would it be wise to stop platooning Montgomery and Jones? I think so. I think Montgomery is a talented guy, but I think Jones is clearly a better running back. Let's see less of split time at running back. Yes, Mike, that's what we were just talking about. A stable offensive line will help with picking up blitzes and reading them and helping Brett out. Jay, I completely agree. They got hit with some easy blitzes that should have been picked up yesterday. Some of that was guys getting beat, but some of that was just plain misreads by the quarterback and or the line. So that's definitely going to be something they work on all week. But the other team gets paid too, so they know they've got a young quarterback back there and they're going to come after him, and it's going to be on him and on the guys around him to adjust and pick it up and make sure they got it. I like our pass and rush. Our corners stink in coverage. Richard Sherman, exclamation point. Is that a call to trade for Richard Sherman? That's a bold move. Would it hurt to take a flyer on Revis? If you want to add another guy into the mix who can't cover, sure. Bennett blocking, yeah, it has not been stellar. There was one play in particular yesterday that led to the sack where Lane Taylor got rolled up on, where Bennett had a very poor effort. For the most part, actually, he's blocked pretty well, but yesterday he had one or two really bad efforts. Why do they keep so many wide receivers if they don't use them? Not sure I get what you're saying there. They go 3-4 wide all the time. Just because maybe they're not catching 10 balls each, that doesn't mean they're not being used. Hundley can be great, but if we can't stop anyone, it doesn't matter. Christopher, looking at the game again this morning, the defense obviously had some issues. They had a lot of guys in and out. They started the game with 3 guys down in the secondary. But I tell you what, man, given that Hundley turned the ball over 3 times, 3 interceptions, a couple of those times in advantage situations for the offense, getting out of there only allowing 23 points is not terrible. Now, obviously, they've got to tackle better. Dom Capers is the first thing he said today. The tackling was not up to snuff. Their effort, their communication in the backfield, the defensive backfield, was downright abysmal. Those are things that they gotta clean up. But I wouldn't just write them off just yet. Again, it's the same thing as on the offensive side with the offensive line. They have to get just a stretch of health, and then they may be able to put something together. But as long as they're back there throwing different guys in and out every week, so many different places, it sounded the exact same as what Capers was talking about last week in the Dallas game, where they had guys playing positions and making calls and doing things that they hadn't done all year, because they had to coach people up. They had two safeties playing corner at the end of that game. So you throw that together, and it's going to be hard. If they can just get some semblance of a stretch of health, they'll be better. If I wanted to watch a bunch of second stringers, I'd watch the preseason. Yeah, well, by December in the NFL, you're watching lots of second stringers around the league. The Packers do not seem like the same team. They need to pick it up. McCarthy mentioned something very close to that. They definitely were flat after the injury to Rodgers, and they were never really able to kind of get back into it. And that's unacceptable. You're a paid professional. Yes, Rodgers is the leader of the team and one of the best, if not the best player in the league, but you can't fall apart if he gets injured. Injuries are part of the game. So I would look for a much crisper, much more spirited effort out of the Packers on Sunday against New Orleans. If our receiving core can stay healthy, we have a solid shot. Hundley has showed promise. I completely agree. I think Hundley has shown that he can make the throws, and he did a really good job yesterday of keeping his eyes downfield, not looking at the rush. Now, sometimes that resulted in a sack, especially on a corner blitz or a safety blitz. But, for the most part, I thought he did pretty well yesterday, considering the environment he was in, considering that he had a backup third-string guard playing left tackle for a lot of the second half. I mean, the guy can only work with what's put in front of him. And given the situation he was thrown into, it could have been 10 times worse. Even with Rodgers not playing, it's not like we lost to a bad team. I would agree with that. I mean, you gotta give props to the people you play, and Minnesota brought it, no doubt about it. They themselves were playing injured. Now, the difference was, obviously, they had all week to plan around their injuries. The Packers lost Rodgers in the second series. But, that defense is no joke. That defense is legit, and will shut down a lot of people in that building. So I can't impress upon you how insanely loud it gets there on third down. Like, it hurts. You feel it in your head. It's ugly. I can't imagine playing football in that environment. Don't let this man get hurt, too. He's all we got. It's a fair point. I was wondering yesterday if Hundley did get hurt, where they would go. I know they've spoken before about Jordy Nelson being their emergency quarterback, but Randall Cobb has got some experience at quarterback from his time in Kentucky. So part of me kind of wanted to see what would happen, but thankfully Brett was fine. This is make or break time for Hundley. He could be a starter somewhere next year or be unemployed. Well, I don't think he'd be unemployed. I think he's shown enough. He's at least a backup in this league. But you're absolutely right that this will make or break his fortunes heading into the offseason, as far as if he plays well enough to lead them to a bunch of wins, then you got to think some team somewhere will give the Packers at least a decent draft pick for him. Now, but if he comes out and plays much like he did during the preseason and camp, then that draft pick won't be as premier. Is that a word? Is that the right word? I don't know. But yeah, this is his time. It is absolutely his time to shine. And if he plays well, the better it is for him, the better it is for the Packers, obviously. B.J. Raji at quarterback. Thank you, Corey. That's nice. I like it. The talk about Patrick Peterson leaving Arizona is crazy talk. Yes, it is. That is simply NFL Network needing to fill network time. What do you think of your boy Lindsey Pipkins? Ross, I thought he played pretty darn well. He got beat once or twice, but young corner, his first extensive action. He definitely showed a willingness to tackle. He definitely showed that he's a bit of a fire plug and needs to maybe put a cap on those emotions a little bit. But he brought energy and he brought physicality, something that's lacking a little bit there in the secondary. So, hey, man, I thought he played a heck of a lot better than Josh Hawkins. I don't think there's any question there. So maybe we see a little bit more Pipkins against the Saints next week. Manning win one. Jake Manning was barely hanging on to win the second one, his second one. So I don't think Peyton's coming back anytime soon. Has anybody talked Favre? Not here, Jason, but yesterday Ed Werder did say he asked Brett Favre, and Brett Favre said absolutely not, which means maybe, obviously, when you're talking to Brett. What did you think about the hit? I want to say it was dirty, but it was legal. I didn't find it necessary, but you can't be mad. I agree with that. I know McCarthy was asked about it today, and McCarthy said he thought it was unnecessary, which is probably true. But as somebody said on my voicemail video, which is up at PackersNews.com, you can go watch. If Clay Matthews does that to an opposing quarterback, Packer fans are like, no, that's the game. You know, you ask any defensive player, if you've got a shot at a quarterback, you take it. Especially if it's a premier QB. You want to get, every defensive player in the league will tell you, you're going to hit that guy in the hopes of knocking him out of the game because it changes the entire game, as it did yesterday. So it's hard. I mean, could a flag have been thrown there? Absolutely. The way the league is set up now, he took 2 steps after the ball was released, or 1.5 if you want to get nitpicky. Obviously could have just shoved Rodgers. Instead, he didn't. He took him to the ground, drove into him pretty hard there on the ground. But, you know, as Brett Favre once famously said, it's not the ice capades. It's football, you know. Is it unnecessary? Absolutely. The Packers upset about it? Absolutely. Are Packers fans upset about it? Obviously. But, you know, if the shoe was on the other foot, you'd be totally fine with it. So it's hard to get too worked up about it. Martinez and Clark are playing really well. Couldn't agree more. I think you talked all offseason about guys who would take that jump, that year 1 to year 2 jump. And you look at the play from both of them. I think a lot of people expected it from Kenny Clark. I certainly didn't expect it from Martinez, and he has absolutely proven me wrong there. That guy is playing some very, very good football. Let's see. Do you think Kevin King is the best corner on the roster? Mike? I don't even think it's a question. Yes, by a long shot. Excited to see how Hundley performs. Let's evaluate the roster around him. I agree with that. People need to stop. Hundley knows the offense better than anyone in free agency. Absolutely. Every one of the coaches was hurt. I saw one coaches. Wait, what? The bye week is definitely going to help? Yeah, you would think so. I hope Hundley goes undefeated just to read quarterback controversy in Green Bay. If Hundley goes undefeated as the leader of the Green Bay Packers, they may even get a first-round pick out of him. But there will be no quarterback controversy. The only controversy is how many zeros are going to be behind Aaron Rodgers' next contract. Let's see. If we can get healthy around the O-line and run the ball, we'll be okay. I agree with that assessment. Where's the rookie linebacker we drafted? Seth, he will most likely start practicing on Wednesday. Capers was asked about a couple of things, but he did mention that Dimitri Goodson and Vince Beagle will both most likely practice this week, which gives then the Packers 21 days to activate one or both to the 53-man roster. So Beagle should be practicing starting Wednesday. This is where we see how good this coaching staff really is. I tend to agree. Don't forget, last time this happened in 2013, you know, the Packers set up all week with Seneca Wallace, and then Wallace got hurt, like in the first quarter. And then, you know, they go all week with Scott Tolzien, and then Tolzien gets banged up, and they had to bring in Matt Flynn. So, you know, this will be a very different situation in the sense that they've had Hundley for 3 years. They know what he can do. They're going to game plan with him all week. We're going to see what comes up on Sunday. I think McCarthy, he sure seems energized by the challenge, if that's the phrase I could use. Judging by his press conference today, it's the most fired up I've seen him in a long, long time. As one of my Twitter followers said, it felt like he was going to jump over the podium at one point. So, yeah, I think he's invigorated, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of positions he puts Hundley in. What was with Vogel's 26-yard punt? Yeah, Greg, that was a shank, and he had another pretty poor punt as well. We've talked about it a couple times here. He was always that every practice almost that we saw in training camp, he would have a series of really good punts, and then he would always have one really bad one. Yesterday, that 26-yarder was his really bad one. So, you know, consistency is a big part of being a punter, and obviously they like what he's done for the most part, but he has got to get that straightened up. He cannot I mean, one of those bad ones in a close game could, swing the balance, so to speak. Season over? Question mark? I don't know, Russian bot. You tell me. That's an interesting name you got there. Ted must go, says Robert. I love it. Ted must go. You guys are funny. Leave Matt Flynn wherever he is, please, Mitchell. Don't worry, I'm sure that's the plan. Any chance Rodgers comes back for the playoffs? Very small chance. A chance. Very small. Rodgers have good 6 years left. Yeah, around that, Stephen, I would think. I mean, he has, talked many times about wanting to play till he's 40 and or beyond, and I wouldn't bet against him. McCarthy should have called plays downfield. It's real easy to say until you look at Justin McCray at left tackle and everything going on in the offensive line, their inability to pick up blitzes. I mean, yeah, they should go downfield. That's a great idea. Yes, they're stacking the box, but when your pass protection can't hold up for a 3-step drop, let alone a 5 or a 7, you're kind of hamstrung as a play caller. So being in Lambeau will help. If they can get a little bit healthier, that'll help. But yeah, he was calling the game he needed to call in that environment with the line that he had. Campen is earning his wages this year. You got that right. Thoughts on Mike Daniels' play the last 2 weeks? Mike, I thought it's funny because I thought last night on the plane I was coming home and I thought, gosh, I didn't really see Mike a whole lot, but I was watching the game again today and he actually played pretty well. He was very quiet last week, obviously, against a really good offensive line. But he played better than I thought he did when I went back and watched it. He does lots of stuff that doesn't show up on a box score or maybe isn't flashy enough to make highlights. But I thought he played better yesterday than he did down in Dallas. Can Raji play quarterback? Thanks, Butch. That was the Raji question I need to get out of here. Thanks a lot, everyone. I'm gonna head, but thank you so much. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. They do fly by very fast. In the meantime, make sure you're checking out PackersNews.com for all the latest. We'll have everything. Ryan Wood just posted something where he talked to a bunch of medical experts about Rodgers' injury. Make sure you read that. And we'll have everything from McCarthy's press conference, everything heading up to the Saints game. We'll have it all. PackersNews.com. Check it out. Thanks a lot, everyone. Talk to you soon.